The stage was brightly lit. Cameras rolled. The broadcast was live. In a massive international TV studio in Geneva, world leaders and dignitaries had gathered to discuss the future of African sovereignty. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young, firm leader of Burkina Faso, sat calm and collected, his back straight, hands folded. Beside him sat Donald Trump, with his signature scowl. The host had barely finished a question when Trump suddenly leaned forward and pointed. With a sneer, he blurted, "You belong in the jungle, not at this table. Go back to the zoo, or I'll have you arrested." The air shattered. A woman in the front row gasped audibly. A camera operator froze. Even the moderator sat still, mouth slightly open. Ibrahim didn't blink. He looked Trump straight in the eye, not with anger, but something worse for Trump. Silence. That silence screamed louder than 1,000 words. Millions watching at home sat in stunned disbelief. Social media exploded. The insult wasn't just racist, it was dangerous. But before Traoré could even breathe a response, Nancy Pelosi, silent till now, slowly rose from her seat, and the entire world held its breath. Nancy Pelosi didn't shout. She didn't scold. She simply walked toward the center of the stage, heels echoing on the cold floor, eyes locked on Trump. "Mr. Trump," she began, voice firm but even, "you just insulted a man who has sacrificed everything for the dignity of his people." Trump rolled his eyes. "Oh, please." "No," she interrupted sharp. "You will listen." The studio was dead quiet now. Even the cameras stopped switching angles. She turned to the audience. "Captain Traoré," she said, gesturing toward him, "led Burkina Faso during one of the darkest periods in its history. While others ran, he stood. While others stayed silent, he fought against terrorism, starvation, and corruption, with nothing but courage and love for his people." Pelosi's voice cracked slightly, emotion building. "And you call that man an animal?" A close-up showed Traoré's eyes welling, just slightly. Even some of Trump's own aides looked away in shame. One young African woman in the audience began to cry, and then Pelosi looked Trump dead in the face and whispered into the mic, "You should be ashamed." Twitter, TikTok, newsrooms, everyone lost it. But what Traoré did next, no one expected. He hadn't spoken a word. But when Ibrahim Traoré slowly stood, every camera turned. He adjusted his military jacket, eyes still calm. The room was frozen in time. Then, softly, gently, he said, "I come from a nation where children dig through trash for food, and yet they still smile. Where mothers walk 10 kilometers just to find clean water, and still sing lullabies." He looked around the room. "And I stand here, not because of power, not because of politics, but because I love my people." His voice grew firmer. "I don't need anyone's permission to defend the dignity of Africans." He turned his head slowly and faced Trump. "I am not here to entertain you. I am here because my people matter. Africa matters." The audience burst into applause. Some stood, others cried. Even a few of Trump's supporters didn't clap, but they didn't dare speak either. And in that moment, it wasn't about politics anymore. It was about pain and dignity, and how one young man's quiet strength outshone even the loudest voice in the room. But the night was far from over. Something darker was coming. As the applause settled, a backstage mic picked up a whisper. "We should cut the feed." It was a U.S. producer. A voice in his earpiece, unidentified, had just ordered him to pull the plug. "We can't let this go viral." But it was already too late. Clips of Traoré's words were flooding X, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. "I don't need anyone's permission to defend the dignity of Africans." That one line? It was already trending worldwide. In the studio, Trump clenched his jaw, shifting uncomfortably. For a man who thrived on control, he was losing it, and fast. Meanwhile, Ibrahim sat back down, calm again. Nancy Pelosi remained standing. "Let's finish this discussion," she said, adjusting her blazer. Trump growled, "Discussion's over." Pelosi turned to the moderator. "Let the world see what leadership truly looks like." The audience murmured, a mix of respect, shock, and something new. Realization. But then the moderator, a renowned British journalist, did something strange. He leaned into the mic and said, "Captain Traoré, may I ask you a personal question?" Ibrahim nodded. And what followed? Peeled open wounds. The moderator looked him in the eye. "Captain, how did you survive the ambush in Palma last year?" You could hear a pin drop. Ibrahim's face changed just slightly. He exhaled. "I shouldn't be here," he began softly. 12 of my men were slaughtered that day. I held one of them. He was just 20, as he bled out in my arms. Nancy looked down, hand over her mouth. "I carried the bodies myself. I buried them. Alone." His voice cracked. "I had no American support. No drones, no satellites. We had sticks, old rifles, and our bare hands." He paused. "And yet, we stood." Trump muttered, "Still crying about it?" The studio gasped again. This time, a woman in the front row, a former UN ambassador, shouted, "Show some respect." Ibrahim didn't flinch. He continued, "I sleep 2 hours a night. I have buried more friends than I can count. But I wake up every morning for the people who believe in hope." Silence again. Hope. It echoed. But what no one knew was that Ibrahim had brought something with him, and it was still hidden under his chair. From beneath his chair, Ibrahim slowly reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded, worn letter, yellowed at the edges. His hands trembled slightly. "This," he said, "is a letter my mother wrote me before she died." Gasps. She was never on TV. She never spoke English. But she raised me with wisdom kings never had. He opened the letter, voice shaking. "My son," he read aloud, "if the world insults you, walk taller. If they spit on Africa, you must show them what royalty truly looks like. Not in gold, but in grace." The words stung the room. Ibrahim blinked, holding back tears. "She told me, do not scream, do not beg. The loudest men are often the weakest." His voice broke completely now. "She died 2 weeks before I became president. I never got to show her the palace. She never got to see me in uniform." Pelosi wiped her eyes. Even some in the crowd, Trump supporters, looked visibly shaken. But Trump only scoffed. "Emotional manipulation," he muttered under his breath. Cameras caught that, and the internet would not forgive it, because the next thing Ibrahim revealed would leave everyone speechless. The studio lights felt heavier now. The audience sat, silent but charged. Ibrahim folded the letter carefully and tucked it away. His eyes scanned the room, a room filled with thousands watching live, millions online. Then, with quiet authority, he spoke. "My mother's words are my shield. Not hate, not anger, but hope." The weight in his voice was almost unbearable. He looked directly at Trump and said, "Your words reflect fear, not strength." Trump's face tightened, but Ibrahim continued, "I have faced enemies who kill without mercy. They call me enemy every day because I defend my people." He paused, the room hanging on every word. "But I am not their enemy. Nor am I yours. I fight for dignity, justice, and peace." There was no shouting, no bluster, only calm, deep strength. The audience, some with tears in their eyes, felt the weight of his honesty. Nancy Pelosi nodded approvingly, a tear tracing down her cheek. And somewhere in the room, a child watching on a phone whispered, "That's a real hero." Suddenly the host interrupted gently. "Captain Traoré, Your country is struggling with many crises. How do you lead in such hardship? Ibrahim's eyes glimmered. In every hardship lies a lesson, he replied softly. My people taught me patience, courage, and sacrifice. He described children studying by candlelight, mothers sharing a single loaf of bread, soldiers defending homes without weapons. But, he said with a rare smile, hope never left us. The host asked, and what do you want the world to know? Ibrahim looked right into the camera. I want the world to see Africa's heart, not its pain. I want leaders to listen, not just speak. As he spoke, tweets exploded across the globe. Africa's true leader. Humility and strength. Trump, watching quietly, clenched his fists. Nancy Pelosi whispered to a colleague, this is history. The tension was electric. Just as the interview seemed to settle, a sudden commotion broke out. A group of protesters outside the studio began chanting loudly, visible through large glass windows. Some chanted, "Justice for Africa," while others shouted, "End racism now." Cameras panned outside. The message was clear. This moment was bigger than just a broadcast. Back inside, Pelosi looked at Traoré and said, "You have inspired millions." Trump's voice cut in sharply. "This is all political theater." But Ibrahim stood firm. "This is truth," he said quietly. The studio seemed to hold its breath. The world was watching, waiting for what would come next. And with that, the broadcast cut to commercial. The cameras returned from the commercial break. The studio felt heavier now, as if the walls themselves carried the weight of the world. Ibrahim Traoré sat silently, gathering his thoughts. Around him, the faces of global leaders bore expressions ranging from respect to disbelief. Nancy Pelosi leaned in toward the moderator and whispered something. The conversation shifted. "Captain," the moderator began gently, "you carry the hopes of millions. How do you deal with the pressure, the weight on your shoulders?" Ibrahim's eyes softened. "When I was a child, my mother told me, a leader's strength is measured not by power, but by the love he holds for his people." He paused, voice thick with emotion. "Every night, I see faces of children who may never see peace. I carry their hopes in my heart." The room was silent except for the quiet sniffles of some audience members. Trump shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Ibrahim's gaze met Pelosi's, a silent understanding between two who knew leadership's true cost. This was no longer just politics. It was humanity. Ibrahim unfolded the letter again, holding it tenderly in his hands. "My mother never went to school," he said softly, "but she taught me lessons that no classroom could hold." He read aloud, "Son, when the world tries to break you, remember who you are. You are made of the earth, the sky, and the dreams of those who came before." His voice cracked. Tears welled up, but he held them back. "This letter reminds me to never give up, to lead with kindness, even when surrounded by cruelty." The studio lights dimmed slightly, as if to honor his words. Pelosi's voice broke. "That kind of strength is rare." Even some of Trump's advisors looked moved, but Trump whispered under his breath, "All talk." Ibrahim met his gaze. "Words build bridges or walls. I choose bridges." That moment was electric, a spark lighting a path for millions watching in silence. The tension was almost unbearable. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but then paused. No words came. For once, silence spoke louder than any insult or accusation. Ibrahim sat quietly, dignity shining through. Nancy Pelosi stood and addressed the entire room. "Today we witnessed more than a clash of words. We saw courage, resilience, and truth." Her gaze swept across the room. "Let us remember, real leadership is not about tearing others down, but lifting them up." The studio erupted in applause. Millions around the world felt the same swell of hope. And in that silence, a powerful lesson was written live on air. The night was far from over, but something had changed forever. The broadcast had already gone viral. Screens around the globe showed the moment Donald Trump shouted his racist insult, "Go back to the zoo or I'll arrest you." Millions gasped. But it was Nancy Pelosi's response that echoed longer. Her words, sharp and commanding, left Trump speechless and humiliated on live television. Social media exploded. The hashtag #RespectTraoré trended worldwide. News anchors debated, governments took sides, and ordinary people everywhere were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about race, power, and dignity. But amid the noise, Ibrahim remained steady. He knew this moment was bigger than any insult or argument. It was about the story Africa had waited a lifetime to tell. A story of strength, resilience, and honor. He glanced toward Pelosi, who nodded quietly. Together they had flipped the script. But as the world watched, the real test was only beginning. After the broadcast, Ibrahim returned to his hotel room. The exhaustion hit him like a wave. He pulled out his phone. Messages flooded in from supporters, strangers, even some skeptics. One message stood out. It was from a young girl in Ouagadougou. She wrote, "Thank you, Captain, for showing us that we matter." Tears filled Ibrahim's eyes. He thought about his country's children, their dreams, struggles, and hopes. This moment on TV was more than a victory. It was a beacon, a promise that their voices would no longer be ignored. He whispered a silent vow to carry their dreams forward, no matter the cost. The next morning, the world woke to headlines calling the broadcast historic. Yet beneath the praise, tensions simmered. Some leaders criticized the exchange, calling it divisive, but many more praised Ibrahim's grace and strength. Nancy Pelosi, now a global symbol of allyship, spoke at a press conference, praising Traoré's leadership and courage. Meanwhile, Ibrahim prepared for the next phase. He knew that true change wasn't made in one moment on TV. It was built slowly, through courage, compassion, and relentless perseverance. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, millions believed that hope was real. Days after the broadcast, Ibrahim's phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages of support poured in from all corners of the globe, from children in Burkina Faso to leaders in distant countries. He realized something extraordinary had happened. The world was no longer just watching. They were listening. The insult from Trump had ignited a fierce conversation about race, power, and truth. But more importantly, it had spotlighted Ibrahim's courage and grace. News outlets debated endlessly. Social media burned with heated discussions. But among the noise, a clear message shone through. Dignity and respect cannot be silenced. Ibrahim felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a leader in his country. He had become a symbol, and symbols carry hope. Late one evening, alone in his office, Ibrahim sat quietly. He stared at the framed photo of his mother on the wall, her wise eyes reminding him of his roots. He whispered softly, "For you and for every child who dreams of a better tomorrow, I will carry this fight." His voice held steady, filled with resolve. He knew the road ahead would be long, full of challenges and sacrifices, but his heart burned with a fierce love for his people. He was ready, not just to defend his nation, but to inspire the world. Because true leadership was not measured by power or wealth, but by courage, kindness, and unwavering hope. And Ibrahim Traoré was ready to lead that way. Forever. On the final day of the international summit, Ibrahim stood before the world once more. This time, no insults, no attacks, only truth. He spoke about unity, respect, and the power of understanding. The crowd listened, tears streaming down faces, and millions watching at home cried too. moved by the man who had faced hate and returned it with grace. As the broadcast ended, a wave of emotion swept across the globe. And in that moment, Ibrahim Traoré was not just a leader. He was a beacon of hope. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel hope, strength, or courage, please like and subscribe now. Your support helps us share stories that matter. Drop a comment below. Tell us what moved you most. Let's start a conversation. Let's spread respect and understanding together. Because every voice counts, and together, we can change the world. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay hopeful,